Hello everyone and welcome to a short tutorial regarding the usage of Excel to compute the market share, relative market share, and to create the graphics. I have inserted here the analysis from the quantitative perspective that we have done at the classes and the data for the monetary or value perspective. We have the beer market in Romania 2014, the sales made by all the producers. We have four main players, and in the category others, you use the rest of the companies which are very small that won't have an impact as individual. So we just decided to group them. It's not an official group like Louis Vuitton or Hennessy. For the products market, we just have to add all the sales of beer in that market from all the producers, all the brands. How I'm making the total? I just prefer to select them and use the shortcut with AutoSum. But if you want to use the sum formula, just click on the cell and see that it's sum between B3 and B7. Now that I have the total sales, I can compute the market share. The market share is expressed in percent, and it is a percent from the total made by each company. How we compute a percent from the total? Divide the sales of the company over the total and multiply by 100 to obtain the percentage expression. Equal sales of the company over the total times 100 equal sales of the company over the total times 100 and so on. So you can just repeat the formula, or if you want a more advanced option, in the more advanced option we can block this B8, then just drag the formula equal the sales of the company over the total times 100, and to block or make B8 static, I'm going to insert here dollar sign and after B dollar sign. So dollar sign B dollar sign 8, it blocked the cell. And now I can drag the formula and obtain the values. I cannot use this expression with so many decimals in the interpretation. It is preferred to work with 2 decimals. So I'm going to format the cell number 2 decimals. It's perfect like this. And I'm going to check if my total is what I need, 100%. So I get 100%, no more nor less. Most probably my formula is correct. Now that I have the market share, I can compute the relative market share. For the relative market share, you can use the market share or the sales value. My recommendation, if it is possible and you have access to data, is to use the sales value, because here we already rounded the values and they are a little bit more different than the real situations if they are included in this relative market share. So it's going to be similar, very, very close to the real case, but this would give us more accurate data dividing the sales. For the relative market share, I need to check the leader and the challenger position. Looking at the sales or looking at the market shares, it's clear that the leader is Ursus, challenger from the second place or the main challenger is Heineken. And this is the position on the market. I'm working with the editing part because in an official report you'll definitely have to work with the editing aspect. So now for the relative market share, I can make the ratio between the company sales and the main competitor. The main competitor for every company is the leader, except for the leader. The sales of the company over the sales of the leader. Sales of the company over the leader. Company over the leader. And in case of the leader, I have to divide the sales of the leader to its main competitor, which is the challenger from the second place. We do not compute for the others because it's just a group of companies, or it's not logical to check if that group gets closer to the position of the leader. And do not compute because the result is not going to help us, doesn't have a logical explanation. Also here I have to format the cells to keep only two decimals for the interpretation. And also for the interpretation it's easier to work with percent, although the original indicator is without percent. So I'm just going to multiply the values that we have obtained here with 100. So it is this value times 100 to obtain the percent, and in this case I just can drag them. It doesn't have sense to take the formulas on the last rows. Here I'm just going to place do not compute option, and because I want to obtain exactly the same values, I'm going to format the cells, and at number I'm going to place 0. Okay, so now I have the same relative market share, and at the end my recommendation would be to check again the table and format the table to have the same text, the same size, etc. I can work with Calibri, simple, and for example times New Roman of 11, and everything now is aligned in my table. And for the format, the same, I have the same expression. Now my table is ready for the interpretation. I'm going to create now the graphics. In practice, we can work with tables, we can express with graphics, especially the market share in many cases has a graphic representation. Select the data, insert graphic, go with the pies. You can work like this, 2D, 3D, donut, but do not work with other type of graphics because pi suggests the idea of total, and this is a percent or apart from the total. I'm going to edit at the graphic the title to include everything that is needed for my reader, the indicator, the market, location, and moment of analysis of time. And this title is too big, so I'm going to change it to 11, should be more than enough. I suggest you to include the percentages or the values on the graphic. Make some editing to be visible. You can also include it from here, the data labels. If you want, you can position them differently. But my recommendation is to be somewhere inside, not outside the graphic. To change, you can change the formats from change design or from format. You have many options. My recommendation for the text here is to change it to a more visible color and even maybe use bold if it is possible. You have the percentages. You can now recolor if you want to have the same format for our representation like in report. I will start by selecting one of the pies, format and fill color. Start with the first color, then another color which is maybe a little bit lighter. This is too light, and since I need several colors, I'll opt for this one. Another color, it's better to have different colors, it's more visible for our reader. So this would be, let's say this one, the third color, fourth color, and the last one. Okay. For the representation, if you want, you can use some outlines. For example, you decide how you want to create the chromatic. You can, for example, extract a little bit the um, slices outside. It's a decision related to the chromatics. Or for example, if you want only to work with one of the slices, for example the leader, you can extract only the leader to be more visible. What is important after you have decided on these aspects is also to format the text to have the same format as the table. Calibri perfect, I am with the same type, and this is also Calibri, the same type of writing. What I need now it is to format also these values. These values do not represent anything. I need to replace them with the producer. Click them, click right and select data. For the select data, go on edit and select these ones from the first to the last. Okay, okay, and now I have everything. This is also Calibri, it's not another format, so it's perfect for my analysis. If you want, you can also modify the font here. For example, you can have the option with fill, solid fill, change the colors, and from here you can change the color included. Again, if you want in your final report, for example, now it's a shade of gray, and also you have the possibility to use a border, for example, if you want. In the original case is without border, but if I want to a solid border of this one, I can change the color maybe to this one. And let's make it a little bit thicker so it is a format like this. If you want to place in another way the legend, you can just go in the chart design, legend, and here also the title can be placed a little bit different, but here is the legend in the right top. I do not recommend it in top usually. Where I have seen placed it is at the bottom or in the right. These are the possibilities that I recommend based on the practice. Okay, and now it should be very clear which company is on the market and the values that I have obtained for the market share. And if I want, I can express this also in percent. I can select here percent, but pay attention to deselect the value. You can see that it is a little bit rounded, but it's still okay, the possibility. So we have the first of the representation for the market share. Again, if you want, you can color the text and so on. A lot of editing possible from my perspective. Okay, maybe this would be the final representation. For the relative market share, the graphic is a little bit different. For the relative market share, I'm selecting only the data where I have to compute, and my recommendation is to use bars. It's not important which one. I prefer bars because pie charts indicate a percent of the total or something from the total, and this indicates the relative market share was computing using the comparison with the leader. A relative market share, beer market, Romania 2014. I will edit it similar to the other one. Okay. And I would insert the values on the graphic. Oh, above would be perfect in this time, this moment. And for the color, for example, I will change the color maybe to this one would be okay. Okay. The titles, the values are calibrated the same as my entire analysis. What I have to do is to substitute here the values. So I'm going to select the data, edit, and place those 4 producers. Okay, now I have the producers also Calibri, perfect. And what I can do also, I can work with the editing to have the same representation. For example, a solid fill, I worked with a type of gray for the previous one. Maybe I should work with a similar type of gray for my graphic, this other graphic, as you can see, as a background. And for the exterior, the border, I preferred a border. It was this color. I changed the color, but I also had changed the width a little bit, making it thicker. So now they have a similar format, as you can see. What can we do with the graphic? And this is one of the possibilities that can help you, is to edit these grid lines and format access. Now that you can see that we can edit these parts, these are associated with the grid lines. My recommendation, maybe to be easier for the interpretation, is to keep on only one single grid line, the one which is smaller or greater than 1. If it is above 1, it is just the leader of the market. So for the major, place 1, and here you should place 0. In other words, this is the limit. I will have only 1, and the maximum value, I would set the maximum value exactly the value of the leader, and pay attention, place here, change it to 0. Okay, so now you can see that instead of having so many lines, we have the line that differentiates the leader from the rest. And we now can see that the other companies represent the percent for the leader, while the leader exceeds by a small percent the company from the second place. By how much? By the value that it's over 1. So this is how I would prefer to keep my graphics for the final report. For the interpretation, because you need to make the interpretation in the analysis, I will say something like this for the products market. For the interpretation, I will say that the total sales of beer in Romania in 2014 have reached or represented 1,100 million euro. And it's not necessary to mention the perspective, because it is clear that this is the monetary perspective. For the market share, I'll use URABB. The sales of URABB in Romania in 2014 represented 8.18% from the total sales of beer. And I need to mention the perspective from the monetary or value perspective or point of view. And for the relative market share, the interpretation, I'm going with the URABB. The total sales or the sales of URABB in Romania in 2014 represented, and this is 0.32 or 32% from the leader sales, because I divided my sales to the leader, represented 32% from the leader's sales from the monetary perspective. For the leader, it is a little bit different, in the sense that the leader exceeded the challenger or the company from the second place by how much? By 8%. If it is 1 or 100 is equal. If it is over 1 or 100, it is greater. So in case of the leader, the sales of Ursus breweries And I'm going to combine both market share and relative market share. So the sales of versus breweries in 2014 represented 25.45%. Let me change it to English in points. Represented 25.45 from the total sales of beer, respectively exceeded by 8%. This is 8%, 1088%, the sales of the challenger. And I need to place the perspective from monetary perspective. Okay, and now I should have everything that is needed for my analysis or interpretation. And this is what you should know to do for your analysis. Okay, the graphics and the interpretation. And just place a little bit here the values to be clear. So we have the graphics, and I will leave also this quantitative perspective in the document as a comparison. But this is how your Excel should look like for the final analysis, or at least something similar.